Hi everyone, Kevin Ellis here from the Land and New Homes Network and Thomas May Group, and today we're back with our podcast series at the Plotting Shed, and today I'm joined by Steve Shaw, Director of the PX Partnership. So hi Steve, how are you?
Very well, Kevin.
Good stuff.
Right.
Well, we've just been talking off air, talking about your lockdown creations of baking sourdough bread. Who would have known that somebody like your good self would have been a classic baker?
Still got dreams one day of starting my own bakery.
Yeah.
Sourdough Steve.
Yeah, sourdough Steve.
Yeah.
I like it. It's got a ring to it.
It has.
Where's the shop going to be? What are you going to sell? You're going to be doing coffees, teas?
I don't know,
cakes?
just a pipe dream at the moment. I don't think I can make enough to pay the mortgage with just the few loaves that I bake, but maybe one day.
So you're just going to rock around like the Pillsbury Doughs man, sort of.
Pretty much, yeah.
Chucking flour around the place and whatever. Well, thanks for joining us. Obviously, it's been great getting to work with you guys over recent times, particularly around part exchange. And obviously, thought for everyone sort of watching the podcast today, we'd just have a bit of a run through.
Sure.
But do you mind, just for everyone's benefit, just give us a bit of background, your agency career? Obviously, we worked together a long time ago.
We did, yes.
Did I ever ask you if you ever ran out of the Indian restaurant? Were you part of the clan that stitched me up?
I heard that story, but I was not part of that, thankfully.
I was a spotty estate agent trainee.
Yeah, you got stitched with a
Got stitched. I think it was sort of an initiation process.
Yeah.
About 8 people. Left me and my colleague
I'm
in the restaurant with a bill.
Yeah, no, I wasn't part of that.
All right.
For the record, I like to say that.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I think you're probably right. So we'll let you off of that one.
Yeah.
So talk to us about PX Partnership. What's going on, and a bit more about you guys.
Okay. Well, just to give you the background, I started off in agency in 1988. Wanted a job where I could wear a suit and drive a company car with no proper qualifications. So I thought estate agents is the life for me. That kind of led me on the path to where I am now, really. So I did that for about 5 or 6 years, moved into asset management, sort of dealing with the sale of repossessions back in the 90s, which you probably remember were prevalent.
Well, I think we had a bit of a similar career path, really, because I did agency, I did repossessions and asset management.
Yeah, for Portman.
For Portman Building Society,
That's
so
it.
did that. I actually came at it slightly different because I went from kind of an admin role into the repossession asset management and then to agency. So
I kind of did it the other way around. So I did my time in agency, moved into asset management initially with Bristol and West, which at the time was part of Hampton's Property Services, Hampton's relocation. So based in Swindon, then they relocated to Bristol. Did that for 6 months, and then I joined the company where I'm at now. Back in the day, we were called ARC Property Group. So we did that for probably about 3 or 4 years. I joined back in 94, so nearly 30 years next year, been with the company. Then we started the PX business in 97, initially working with McCarthy and Stone, the retirement house builder. Yeah. And we worked with them still work with them now, but really solidly for about 20 years or so. Yeah. And what we tend to work more, like about 50-50 with the retirement house builders and 50-50 with the SME house builders. Because what we do fits really well with the small house builder. They want to be able to have a PX scheme that enables them to compete on a level playing field with the volume house builders, but a lot of them don't have the desire, the appetite, the funding, or the resource to deal with it. So if they can outsource it, it means they get the benefits of having their own PX scheme, but without any of the downsides of having to run it themselves.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you sort of look back over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years and whatever, and obviously it's amazing is sort of those of us that have been in the job for a while, we're dusting off those old classic incentives, but actually it comes back to the good old-fashioned part exchange, assisted move, and sort of some of the other classics in there. And how are you sort of finding it? Obviously, right now, I'm guessing it's pretty.
Right now, it's pretty busy. Yeah, we had a bit of a lull, obviously. In the post-COVID market, when just things are going crazy, there was no need for people to PX, and so we got by. There always a need for it. Yeah. Certainly in the retirement sector, where people are downsizing, and a lot of people haven't moved home for 5 decades sometimes or more, and so they're not familiar with the whole buying and selling process.
Do they just like that certainty then? Is that what draws them to sort of go down your route? Or
that's it. I mean, if you imagined an 80-year-old widow, for example, who is, say, like McCarthy and Stone's, typical buyer, that they haven't moved for many, many years. Often they're moving from one area to be closer to their family in another area, so they don't have help at hand locally. Yeah. And so the sale of the property is something which is very stressful for them, I think, especially if they've been there for so many years. It's just the little things like the thoughts of clearing 50 years worth of stuff in the loft or the garage or the shed or what it might be, especially, you know, if their husband's passed away, which is quite often the case in a lot of the people we see, that they used to deal with all the financial elements of the household. And so this really just takes away all of the uncertainty of the process. So they just need to then concentrate on the physical move, and there's lots of help out there that the developers can give them to help with that. But the actual sale of their property needn't be a concern, because we'll come along, we'll explain to them how the process works, we'll get the valuations done, we'll make them an offer. And if they accept that offer, then it's a guaranteed sale. They can just sit back and know that that's in the bag, it's not going to go wrong. So that's one less thing to worry about. And it's one of the biggest things, really. They can then concentrate on, say, the actual physical side of it, and looking at the downsizing, the decluttering, which is still quite a stressful part of the process. But the bigger things like, is my sale going to fall through? Is the first time buyer going to pull out at the bottom of the chain? And all these worries that people have, and the delays and the timings of bringing it all together, they don't have that. So
we're in this Amazon-esque world now, aren't we, where we want it now, we want it sorted quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're happy to pay a price for it or take a compromise to get it done. Yeah. Just want to get on with our lives. We're busy people. We're doing whatever. And I suppose particularly at the moment, obviously rate of sales. Obviously we'll talk about fall-through rates in a moment of what you're experiencing, but I think certainly, that certainty, and people want to get on with their lives.
It's a convenience product at the end of the day, isn't it? And it's like we buy any car, and it's exactly the same principle as that. People know that if you go to the dealer to We Buy Any Car, or to the dealer to PX your car, you're going to get a lower price than you could do if you sold it in the local newspaper. But people can't be bothered.
We did it recently with a car. It's just like, I can't be bothered.
Speed and convenience, that's what it's about. Yeah.
Good stuff. So obviously we've been working with you guys, really starting to roll out the part exchange offering. I guess, as we've said before, obviously when we're looking around at the stock levels generally across the country at the moment, there's some builders that are building great product. They've probably been very good at sort of buying a bit of land, building houses, whatever. But the bit that seems for me, and I don't know whether you'd sort of back this up or seen it, but it almost feels like the sales and marketing bit has just been a little bit lost. And particularly when we look at some of the analysis around stock levels across the country, it staggers me just how many sort of SMEs are out there that have got stock on with agents. Maybe the agents kind of run out of burn in terms of how they get enough footfall through the door, or just generally those sort of initiatives. So the PX for us, certainly as a business, just felt like such a no-brainer to be able to just, even that facility being able to offer it. Are you experiencing a lot more of the SMEs? Are they the people that are more your client bank? Yeah. What's what's the sort of demographic of the firms you're tending to be working with?
Definitely, right, it's the SMEs, like I said before, the ones who want to be able to offer this. But PX, if they were to do it themselves, they could do it themselves, but it detracts from their core business. Their expertise lies in building and selling new homes. If you're then to take on a PX scheme internally, you've got to find someone to deal with that, which is probably going to be the sales manager, who's got enough on their plate anyway at the moment, trying to keep the sales together and sell the units that are coming to stock. But also you've got to apply funding to it, and it does come with its own risks as well. That selling a second-hand property is very different to selling a new property. It's a different set of circumstances, different buyer demographic, etc. And so if you're to take your eye off the ball doing what you do day in, day out to concentrate on this, you can't do both of them really, really well.
I think that, sorry, just to cut in there, I think that's quite interesting, because if you look at some of the volume house builders that are obviously offering part exchange in the sort of way that we know it, they're buying the PX in, it's sitting on the bottom line, it's, on the balance sheet, and what have you. What staggers me is that the pot of money and how it's turned over, and particularly I'm going to sort of be slightly critical maybe of some of the firms that manage these PXs for developers. From an agent's perspective, these instructions are almost sort of offered around like sweets to kids. And on this proviso, well, you've got to take this instruction at a really, really low fee. You're on a multi, and very often, particularly, we work with some really great independent market-leading firms, and they're saying no to those instructions for the principal reason they think it's going to be a pile of aggro. They're completely disillusioned by the fee level. But what staggers me more is how the house builders are allowing those, because in the house builders world, they're almost a problem stock, because it's not a house they built, it's not a house they've got any real control over.
Yeah.
Yet the agent selection is not even the type of agent that they would even consider instructing to sell their new homes. Yet you think, well, you're trusting there for, the agent who's only got 3 listings on the market, that's just desperate for that instruction at whatever fee is going to come along.
Yeah, it's the one who do it for
and
the
they're the
fee.
most problematic agent, because probably they don't have a buyer database. They're not really sort of got that urgency to kind of, or any tactics how they're going to shift it. Do you come across that, or do you find resistance when you're getting agents for valuations on stuff because of perhaps their preconceived ideas?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. We meet quite a lot of resistance sometimes when we go into an agent's office, and we say, we want to do a PX valuation, and they say, "Oh, we don't do PX valuations," and you wonder why? Because it's guaranteed business. If we buy a property, it's got to be sold. We're not like a private vendor who can take it off the market and stay put until the market's better. And I had this example just this week. I went to see a property in Yorkshire, and we take the time to go and see every single property ourselves, which sets us apart from anybody in this industry. That a lot of it is just done all over the phone or online, and like you say, with some of the bigger companies that do asset management, assisted move, etc., their fees are fairly low and they're quite demanding, and so the agents expect to do a lot of work for not much in return. And so we meet quite a bit of pushback from the agents when we go in there, and we have to sit down with them and say to them, look, we're not quite like the others out here. We're a small independent business. I've driven up from Wiltshire to Yorkshire to see this property. That's how invested we are in it. And I went in to see one agent. It was an independent agent. He got the valuers sit upstairs in their office, and the people downstairs in the shop window. And so they sent me upstairs to the director's office, and he sat down and his arms folded, and you could just sense there was a little bit of reluctance there to deal with it. And I had to.
Some of them have been pretty badly treated, or
absolutely,
pretty roughly treated.
Yeah,
to be
I
honest
completely
with you,
understand that. But we sometimes have to do a sales job on them to say, look, we're not like some of the other companies out there. We are here to do a job. If we're not working for the builder, we're working with the builder, so they're not buying it themselves, we're buying it, and if we buy it, you'll be selling it for us, and we'll pay you a decent fee. And that's the thing. There's no kickbacks or anything like that. The fee that we give them is the fee that they receive. And we just explain to them that if they value it properly at the price that they want to see it on the market for, it will come back to the market at that price. So it's a really good instruction. Not only is it the price they want, knowing that they can sell it for that price, they'll get a decent fee from it as well. And like you, with your independent agents, we want to build relationships with those agents so that next time we don't have to try and do the sales pitch on them. They know that we're a good company to work with. They know they're going to get a good instruction from us, and they're keen to do it.
It's certainly been one of the things that we as a network have kind of really wanted to get before we rolled our sort of PX Plus offering out to our agents, we wanted to make sure, particularly from the funded PX route, that we were working with the right partners, hence obviously, working with yourselves. I think, if I just look back, we've obviously had a classic recent example, Western Supermare, haven't we? Which, whilst not necessarily a part exchange as we know it, but a kind of a chain break enabler. What I think, again, is so it's sad in a way that how some of these things get pushed or portrayed, but you look at that particular example where you've got almost a we buy any house type.
That's exactly what it was.
Operation. Yeah. That so they've agreed a price. They then chip in the vendor on the point of exchange. The vendor's quite rightly said, "Well, you can get stuffed." You've stepped in there very quickly, and the net result for that vendor is one, the certainty. Was done pretty quickly, wasn't it? In terms
did
of
about 4 weeks. I think,
4 weeks.
Finish,
so that was really good.
Yeah.
And then he's benefited another 20-25 grand more than he would have had by one of these other operations. And it sort of almost feels that we need to get more PR out there, don't we? About kind of, there's always rogue operators that are out there.
Absolutely.
There are equally people that don't give any of our industries a sort of a great reputation, and it's just, I guess it's just. I'm guessing it is a challenge that you guys must come across.
It is.
Or a path of a bit of resistance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we separated ourselves from that distressed market many years ago, because there were lots of, after the recession, there were lots of companies springing up trying to take advantage of people in desperate situations. We used to offer our services to house builders, to the park home industry, and also to members of the public. But it got too scrappy, and as I said, there was lots of rogue operators cropping up, and we wanted to distance ourselves from those because we're not in that field at all. We're business to business only, and so we only partner with house builders, developers, and new homes agents. For part exchange solely. So every now and again we do get a call into the office from somebody who's just selling a property and they're desperate for a sale, and we just direct the mail sale to a Google search, really, just to other companies that do that. Because like you mentioned, that one in Weston-super-Mare, that was just a property buying company who look for people in desperate situations, and that particular chap, he wanted to sell quickly, he needed to sell quickly. They took advantage of that, chipped the offer by about 30,000, I think it was.
Yeah, it was a lot. I remember when we looked at it at the time, that it was like, wow, that was cheeky.
Exactly.
And bearing in mind when you look at what the valuations were that were sitting there saying, well, look, if it was on the open market, all right, even adjusting it from maybe what he'd had it on when he was trying to do it privately, it was still, you'd have still done well.
Exactly. But it's short-sighted in my view, because those sort of firms will only do one deal with people like that. And they
get away with it then, don't they?
So well, there's lots of people out there, unfortunately, that are in desperate situations who may consider taking it up. But it's not good business, is it? We're about building relationships, about repeat business with developers and estate agents that can get to know what we do, trust what we do, and can recommend that to their clients with confidence.
Do you think that and obviously it's a bigger subject, but when we start looking at sort of, we're in the property industry where fees, everyone's always saying, fees are getting battered down. We're actually seeing that fees are going up at the moment. We're finding a lot more agents getting better fees, particularly better agents who are, working harder, really sort of putting shift in to do it. Yeah. We still seem to be in that classic case, don't we, where there's a lot more people that are still conditioned of that sort of cheap. And I'm, remember my dad said, buy cheap, pay twice.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It's that classic case, isn't it? You think that you're getting a service, but actually the differences of what I see, even just looking around the agents we work with across the country, we've got some that, they're in-house marketing, they've got full creative departments, they've got videography that would challenge even some of the best films that are, produced. And you think that's where agents really are pushing the boundaries. But unfortunately, they do tend to get lumped all is one.
It is a shame, especially with the online agents as well. I think they cheapen the service that a good agent can offer. It's like anything, you get what you pay for, don't you?
Just picking up on a point you said, obviously, around the part exchange. You said that predominantly most of what you do is with new homes agents and obviously house builders. It's not strictly true that it's just part exchange, is it? Because you will step in more right thinking around
chain breaking
and stuff like that.
Yeah. We can do. I mean, that one for Weston-super-Mare, that was a chain break there. We call it part exchange, but it doesn't have to be directly with the developer. It can be a link in the chain. So like one of your member agents there, I think they saw the podcast the webinar.
They came on a webinar. Well, you and I did a webinar. They saw that and obviously then picked the call up after that, didn't
exactly,
they? So.
That's it. So it's about creating awareness, really. But again, whether it be with a new homes agent or with a developer, then we can also chain break at any point as well. So sometimes the direct PX isn't affordable because of the values concerned, or if they're trading up only by a small amount, for example, so the developer's got less support that they can put into the deal. So, but if that buyer has a purchaser for their property that hasn't sold, then we can look at chain breaking their property or at any point, all the way down the chain. And the cheaper the property, obviously, the better the chance there is of putting a deal together. Yeah. Because the numbers involved are a lot less.
So can I just come in on that point then? Because one of the conversations we're having a lot at the moment, and I think I've mentioned this certainly when we've spoken offline before, but for everyone else's benefit, when we've analysed the whole of the UK in terms of the current stock position by region. So for anyone that wants a copy of that research, we're more than happy to make it available. So please get in touch and we'll share it with you. But what's been really interesting was just the sheer amount of stock listed, I'd say, going back originally to, let's say, February, March. Sitting here now, as we approach the end of November, no price reductions, unsurprisingly not sold. You then start looking into it and you've got all the classic cases, still listings that show apartment or show home launching in bloody September, or we're long past. So it's just like the lack of care around the instructions. But what's your advice, for PX to work well? Bearing in mind that ultimately you are going to come in, you're not offering them full market value, are you?
No.
From the best structure in terms of kind of how we make deals happen, I'm saying to agents and developers at the moment, leave the headline prices where they are, whilst we introduce this as a kind of a
absolutely
that enabler.
Yeah.
Would you support that? Or
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the same conversations I have with developers when I go to meet them. Yeah. I went to see one yesterday, in fact, again up in Yorkshire when I was on my trip up there, and they just dropped one plot by £50,000, and you think, oh, you kind of missed an opportunity there, really, because if they'd have just kept the prices where they were, but made a big deal of advertising part exchange. And they had just done it, but they dropped the price just before they started offering part exchange out there, effectively. Yeah. But by advertising PX available, you're going to draw more people to site, especially in this market where people will often put their homes on the market and then they'll go out looking. And if they've been on the market for a while, then they see PX available. Then it removes a barrier for their moving to their new home. And so naturally, more people are going to be directed to those developers offering PX that don't advertise PX. Yeah. And so if you can get more footfall and more traffic to site by doing that, and
it's
you
the easiest way, though, surely, to kind of reinvigorate your marketing, particularly if you've sort of got stock and you've not been able to have PXs as we know it. There's no charge for this, is there, from
no,
your
it doesn't
point
cost
of view?
them
There's
anything.
Nothing, but just look at it and think, well, okay, that on the Rightmove listing, that on the stack board, or that in the advertising that's on the social media, it's just another tactic initiative, isn't it?
It just gets people to site. And we're seeing a lot of the old school tactics, come about now, where the developers, the salespeople would just get a load of leaflets and just go leaflet drop an area where they think their buyers are going to come from to move to this development they're selling. And they're getting good traction from that as well. Just some of the old fashioned
I remember we used to go back through, we could see what all of the other agents' stock was. We knew everything we'd been out to value. That was the first place that we'd go with that sort of message. As that enabler, if you like, to say, well, look, if you're stressing about, the process of everyone coming through your door and loads of viewings and all the other stuff, well, here's a quick fix and, off you go. So
Yeah. But going back to the point, it's a really good way of doing it by advertising part exchange available, keeping your headline price where it is for the time being, and then rather than take 50k off the price, you've got that to support a PX deal, which will guarantee you a sale. Dropping the price isn't going to guarantee you a sale. You might get a bit more traffic to the site, you might get a sale from it, but it doesn't guarantee it. If it's not enough or the market doesn't support it, you've just taken money off the price and you've got nothing more than you had before. Where with PX, if you can use that money, actually guarantees you a sale, which you're in control of as well. Unlike a sale where somebody comes along and sold their property in a chain, you're keeping your fingers crossed the whole time that chain's not going to fall apart. At least with part exchange, it's a guaranteed sale, and the developer's in control of the timescales. So if they want that completed by Christmas or the end of January, or just to tie in when the new plot's actually going to be ready, they're not left with stock, because then as soon as it's CML, they can get the PX completion.
Cool. So Steve, do you want to talk about PX and the definition of PX? I think we assume that everyone knows what it is. Certainly when we look at the SME builders, particularly those that have come through, maybe started their own business in the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, maybe they've come from a construction discipline or other, maybe aren't as familiar with sales tactics like PX, or just assume that the PX is offered by the big national house builders or whatever. Do you mind just in really simple terms, imagine I'm a complete, never knew what PX was. I'm an SME house builder. I've got a few quid. I've thought, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go and start building houses. And then it dawned on me that I've got to shift the things, and market's a bit tougher. Just talk PX through, just talk the process through.
Okay. I think traditionally part exchange has always been associated with the volume house builders. You've got big budgets, big teams of people that will do it in-house, where at what we do, obviously being outsourced part exchange, gives the developer the same benefits as having their own PX scheme, but with a lot more benefits as well. They don't have to put up any money to buy the property themselves. so they haven't got arranged funding. They don't have to apply resource to it, like I was saying earlier on, that they've got a sales manager there who's now responsibility, as well as selling the new homes, is looking after the PX stock. And I was talking to a developer the other day, and he helped set up an in-house scheme for a small developer, but he said a lot of his time was taken up with assessing the PX properties, visiting them every week once they're vacant and trying to sell them. And he said it took up a lot more time, probably half of his time, dealing with 3 or 4 properties than it did dealing with all the other plots he had to sell.
Well, you think about that, probably going back to our certainly early ventures into asset management. I know certainly when I was looking after the repossession stuff, you know, we'd be back out there, we'd be monitoring the agents every week. We'd be sort of, real time consuming stuff just to unlock it. So I'm guessing in a way it's kind of, I can
exactly.
see what you mean there.
And it's a different discipline as well. That it is different to dealing with new homes. So you've got to have that. You've got to wear 2 hats, for example, to do the job well. But it also comes with risk that if you get it wrong, you can lose money very quickly. And quite a lot of it, because we know from our own experience over the years, if you get it wrong, it can cause you quite a lot of pain. And
where does it go wrong?
Basically, I think the easiest way it goes wrong is if you take too much for granted what the estate agent is maybe telling you at the start.
Yep.
Because I can say this with confidence, having been an estate agent in the past, and you know yourself that a lot of agents are kind of so tuned in to trying to get best price for their client. And part exchange is a different mindset, really. You're not trying to get the top price, for the right buyer on the right day with the sun shining. It's about getting the job done. It's about selling that property within 4 to 6 weeks and completing that sale typically within 3 months. Because whether you're an outsourced PX provider like us or you're a developer buying them in-house, you don't want to sit on stock for too long, because it costs you money every day that you're owning that property, but it also restricts opportunities. If you're a developer taking in a property themselves, then effectively you're selling the new plot, but then you're just transferring most of that money and equity into the PX property. Until you sell that, you can't release any profit. Yeah. So it's about turning your stock over all the time. And so by outsourcing PX, the developer doesn't have that concern. It becomes our concern effectively. They're just being given a proceedable buyer that they know when that sale is going to complete. Yep. And so for us then, it's about us turning our stock over.
Good. What other benefits then, Steve?
I think one of the biggest benefits that people don't necessarily realise is that with external PX, you don't have the usual 30% trade-up margin that an in-house scheme requires. Yep. So if a developer was to offer PX but using a third party like ourselves, they can actually have advantages over and above their competitors, one of the big boys down the road, because we can consider properties of an equal value, a lower value, or even a higher value than the plot being sold. We're really concerned with the actual PX property themselves rather than what they're buying from the developer. So it gives more options over and above an in-house scheme. So effectively, if people come to site saying, well, we'd like to, we went to Taylor Wimpey, for example, and we wanted to buy one of their plots, but the value of our property was too close to the one that they wanted to buy, and so they wouldn't consider it. Yep. So we come down here and we found out that you can offer part exchange as well, and you can do a deal with us because the value of my property doesn't matter compared to the value of yours. Yeah. So you've got advantages over your competitors. I
was going to ask just on that, actually, because obviously you mentioned earlier on the retirement developers like McCarthy and Stone, and I remember when I was selling stuff for them years and years ago, and obviously it was always there. That I think it might have even been through yourselves that at the time that it was referenced. What's the demographic then of their client? Obviously that person's buying, let's say, a retirement apartment. Presumably they're selling out the house for potentially a lot higher value than what they're buying for.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think typically the stats are about 75% of people who buy a retirement property are downsizing from a more expensive property. Yeah. Some of them making sideways moves. Some of them will be actually trading up effectively and have to use savings they've got. But typically about 75% of people will be downsizing from a large, 3 or 4 bed detached house or bungalow down to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment.
Cool. Steve, I think that's it's really interesting actually, and I think one of the things we're probably experiencing is that, and I don't know whether you would agree with this, but we're finding that this PX bit is almost like, it's like the last bolt kind of, oh God, we should have done this, or we need to do this now, we're hitting the panic button.
Yeah.
Clearly, we're all getting ready for launches in the new year. Certainly from our side, we're certainly conveying to our agents and the developers we're working with, look, right, we might be launching in March, but we need to have PX as part of the conversation. I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't know if you would agree with that or...
No, I think we're in for probably a similar market throughout the rest of next year, and then with some hopefully some improvement in 25.
So just thinking about that then, with obviously new sites launching, getting that pricing strategy right, particularly around if we need to have this enabler for PX, assisted move, whatever it is, what would your advice be? For any house builder that's sort of, SME or other that are watching this now and kind of planning their strategies, their pricing strategies, whatever, clearly they've got their net achieve figures they're trying to aspire for. What's the best way to pitch this if you could start right, clean sheet of paper?
Yeah.
Well, and off we go.
That's good. I think you're right in what you said earlier on, that traditionally part exchange has been seen as almost as a last resort. If you tried everything else and you get to a stop plot and we think we really need to shift that, let's look at part exchange. And by doing it that way, it's always going to be seen as a poor relative, I think, and not as an ongoing solution. It's more of a rescue than anything else. But what we're seeing now is that more developers are actually using this as part of their sales strategy from the beginning. Yeah. Even some, when they're looking at sites, thinking, well, if we've got a site of, let's say, 20 units, that might take us, 18 months to sell out that site, for example, without part exchange. If they could potentially offer PX on every single plot, and I know this is in an ideal world, but let's say you did part exchange on every single plot, how quickly could you get off site? You can complete a sale. Typically a sale might take from when you first launched the site and the plots to getting completion. It could be 6 months, 9 months, something like that for that sale. With part exchange, providing the unit's built, of course, you can be completing that in 8 weeks. 12 weeks if to tie in with the build program. So imagine if you did every sale using part exchange on a site, how quickly you could finish that site, and then how quickly you could get onto the next site.
I think that's going to become, I think it's certainly an edge that a lot of house builders right now, well, let's look at some of the challenges they've got. You've got the example that you and I spoke about off camera, down near Basingstoke, client's got a fixed term on his development funding. He's built a really good product. I felt that certainly when I looked at the site back in June, and not that I'm involved in the sales on the site, but I felt that there was so many missed opportunities. If I was kind of educating an SME, he had a prime central spot of a location, good road frontage, poor signage, poor kind of telling the story of what was coming, and ultimately a product that was particularly bungalows that, without generalising, was probably more likely to appeal to the more traditional, potentially an older couple, downsizing, whatever, those classic people that perhaps haven't made the move of late or, want a bit of the easier option. That for me would have been a classic, that to have had that sort of much earlier in the process would have just been a bit of a no-brainer really. And also, one, give him the confidence that, right, he hasn't got to start worrying about the refinancing if he's not got all his completions because build's been delayed for whatever reason. Just trying to kind of, facilitate, right, let's keep the cash working, right, let's get on to the next site, and again, just that movement through, because we sit at the other end of the spectrum where we've got agents that are sitting there with staff on site or even developers, and they're sitting there for 7 days a week trying to sort of slog out the last couple of plots. You think, oh my God, how depressing, is that, particularly when you're eroding your profit. So
it should be something which is used as part of the sales process rather than at the end of the sales process if nothing else has worked. Because it keeps the momentum going. If you can do one sale a week, or one sale a month even by part exchange, at the end of the year, you've got 12 extra sales. If you used it as a last resort sales tool, then how many sales would you do by the normal course of business? You might get half a dozen, maybe 8 possibly, and then get to the end of the year and think, right, we need some more sales. But by that stage, it might be too late. You've missed opportunities. But if you use it as part of your sales process, so that you have like a target, for example. So if your target is 4 sales per month, why not trying to do 1 or 2 of them on part exchange? You will get those sales completed quicker. You're in control of them. As I say to the developers, it's like having their own scheme, but without any of the drawbacks. So they get to control when completion takes place, rather than the chain dictate when the sales takes place. It happens when it happens. But with part exchange, you've got us at the bottom, you've got their buyer in the middle, and the developer. We're all in it together, all on the same page. So if the developer says, right, at the end of January, that's going to be build complete, that's when we work towards completing that PX. So everybody gets the sale completed on the same day.
Good advice. So I'm going to just pin you down a little bit more on advice now.
Okay.
So what's some top tips? What's your top advice that you'd be giving to a developer? You know, obviously one that's sitting there trying to shift stock right now. Two, obviously looking at launches for next year. And I'm going to go one step more, which is, you know, back to the agent profile that obviously you want to work with. Clearly you want, you know, good solid advice, whatever. You know, what's the top tips that you'd be giving agents as well, as house builders, that, you know, if you could wave a magic wand and, you know, make the process easier and quicker and more efficient, and more successful, what would they be?
I would say be selective with who you put forward for the scheme. A lot of developers will see it as a numbers game. If you throw enough mud at the walls, eventually some will stick. But it's a false economy, really, because if you think from a salesperson's point of view, they put 10 leads through for PX. Half of those leads, the people may not be that committed. Some of the properties may not be suitable for the scheme, and so you may be left with just one or two real opportunities out of that 10. And so from a salesperson point of view, they've been told to push part exchange, and they're excited and motivated by it because they see that as a route for them getting some sales and commission, etc. And if they put 10 through and only one or two of them work, then they start to get a little bit despondent because they think, well, we're doing all this work, we're promoting it, it's not that successful.
Yeah.
And from our point of view as well, if we've been offered 10 properties and only 2 out of those 10 have got a chance of going anywhere, either by the types of properties that work for part exchange or, more importantly, the owner's expectations. That's the big thing. Managing expectations is a huge part of the process to guarantee success.
But just on that expectations for a second, because let's be honest, your offer could be much lower than what they mentally are thinking their house is worth.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at what the saving is that could be negotiated on the onward sale, is it? Or other incentives or other things. So it is the whole package.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's 3 things really that need to come together for successful part exchange. You need to have, the homeowner needs to have realistic expectations. They need to have a property which is suitable for part exchange. And by that, I mean something which is saleable, because our business model is that we buy and we sell. So every property we look at, we're always thinking, you know, can we sell this? Is it, you know, how long is it going to take to sell? Who's going to buy it? How much they're going to pay and where they're going to come from, the buyers. And so if we can't establish that, then it becomes very difficult for us, and then it becomes, as an opportunity, it kind of falls away, really. So it needs to be the right type of property, owner's expectations, and the developer also has to have an attitude towards putting a level of support to the offer that will get a deal. It's not a silver bullet that will solve all your problems with people with houses to sell.
Yeah.
Conditions need to be right for it to work, and we don't make any secret of that, because, as I said, if we start getting offered loads of properties and we're offering on 10 and only one accepts, we're doing a load of running around, a load of work to that, and then the relationship starts to fall in. The developer gets despondent with it, we get despondent with it, and it can fall over before it's got a chance to be successful.
And I think there's an interesting point there, because certainly that qualification, because I remember one I think Claire passed over to you that had come from one of our agents over in Essex, and they're sitting there. I think they'd been on the market, as you quickly established. They'd been on the market with that agent. Yeah. Price hadn't really adjusted, and it's like, in the end, you can point the finger of why it's not sold, but there's 4 more probably pointing back at the vendor, saying, well, this was just completely realistically priced in the first place. Yeah. And as a result, you're not the magic solution to come in and, well, the pill they might have to swallow with the figure which your figure will be absolutely right. It's just they've been massively misinformed right from the beginning of the process. Yeah. And as a result, it's much like land deals, we find exactly the same, where somebody's gone and plucked out some wild figures, and then you think, God, I've got to try and backpedal for that. So,
and I think it's important for the developers to promote the fact that part exchange is an incentive. It's not a given. A lot of developers use it as a given, but it comes at a cost to the developer in terms of the level of support they put into it to get to a point when the purchaser will accept it. But then you do get the greedy purchasers who want the PX deal, and then they still want £20,000-30,000 off the plot as well. They can't have it at both ends. So it needs to be sold to them to say, well, if you come to me sold or cash or in a proceedable position, we can do a deal on the plot, for example. But if you want us to buy your house, that's the incentive. So don't ask for money off the plot and for buy your house, because it's got to be paid for somehow.
Cool. Final question. Estate agents.
Yes.
I love them. We work with them. Don't get me wrong.
We used to be one, didn't we?
We were one once before. No, we love working with agents. But unsurprisingly, and you must see it as well. We're travelling the length and breadth of the country. The differences are just extraordinary. Do you see that? And what's the best agent for you?
For us, we like working with independent agents because they've done their time through normally the corporate agency background. Yep. They've learnt their trade, their skill, and they think, actually, I'm pretty good at this now. I can go and do this for myself, and earn some good money and a good living.
Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and they've got to put. They've got to sell and be successful to put food on the table, to support their family, support their employees, and you get a better service. I find that you do get some good corporate agents, of course you do, but the turnover of staff is quite high. There's a lack of continuity, and I think because of that, you get a lack of experience. And we come across examples when you get a lister who's paid more to get a property on the market than the neg is to sell it. So where's the incentive to get it on the market at a decent price? You're just listing for the sake of it. And, every town has an agent who's renowned for getting properties on the market at whatever price and then trying to chip away at those prices. And they don't help anybody. They're just wasting money on marketing a property. Then eventually we'll be taken off them. The homeowner just wastes time trying to sell when, at too high a price when they could have sold months ago with a decent agent who's going to give them some decent advice from the get-go.
Cool, good advice. Steve, it's been great to get you on.
Thank you. It's been
You're
a
little
pleasure.
bit apprehensive about coming on to the podcast, first of all. Hopefully it's been a painless experience.
It has. You made it very painless, thank you.
Our guys behind the cameras, are obviously adept at this. You can't see them, but let's just say we've had anyone watching our previous podcast, at least today, hopefully, touch wood, the memory card's been put in to actually record this. Otherwise,
so this wasn't a practice then.
This wasn't a practice. Okay. I'm hoping. So no pressure, Chris. And hopefully they turn the cameras on. So thanks very much. Obviously Friday we're recording this today. Sourdough baking at the weekend.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What's on the offer this week? Pizzas as well, or just
no
loaf up?
No, just a couple of loaves of sourdough.
Right.
One white, one granary.
And one step closer to opening that bakery shop.
Let's see.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks, Steve.
Pleasure.
Great. So that was really great to obviously hear from Steve at the PX Partnership, obviously about what those guys do and obviously how part exchange is really important. It's certainly something that us as a Land and New Homes Network have really dived into. We're really proud to have announced that we've just recently launched our own PX Plus offering, which aside of obviously being able to offer the fully funded part exchange, also through our agency network, they're able to offer best-in-class support for developers that are looking at sort of offering assisted move and part exchange. So, if you want to tap into any of that, we've got a central team here that coordinate and manage that stuff through. So, be very happy to have conversations. In the meantime, look forward to getting back on the podcast again soon. We've been offline for too long. It's been one of those New Year missions that we've got to get ourselves tuned into. So, if you'd like to come and join me in the plotting shed, and you think you've got something really interesting to talk about, then I'd love to hear from you, and also welcome all your comments on today's podcast. Thanks very much.